A couple weeks ago, I made this. This was my first attempt at a camera stabilization system. I just made it out of a chunk of aluminum and some other stuff I got from the hardware store. You'll have to check out that video if you want to. And anyways, my conclusion on this rig I made here was that it was good for slower speed footage, like if you're just panning around something, but as soon as you started to do anything like a little more jerky, like run or even fast-paced walking, sort of caused a bit of an issue. I've decided to have another crack at it and totally redesign it and make a new one. And I'm going with a totally different design this time. I had a look at some other people's homemade ones that I saw on YouTube, and everybody uses the plastic PVC piping. So I went to the hardware store and I was about to pick up some of that when I saw this copper tubing, and I've used this in the past for other projects, and I know for a fact that it is totally rigid. Like, it does not move at all, especially in these short little chunks that we're going to be using for this application. So I bought myself 5 feet of that. The first chunk here was 17 inches long, 2 7.5 inch chunks. These ones are 5.5 inch each. I've got a 5-inch chunk here, 3 3-inch chunks, and a couple 2-inch chunks there. Then as far as adapters go, I've got a couple elbow joints, and then I've got 5 T-joints. Just note that these 2 T-joints could be replaced with elbows. I just got T's because I wasn't sure what I might need to do. I also chopped out a chunk of plywood. I think it's about 5 inches across by about 8 inches wide or so. This will just be my camera mount, nice big surface, super rigid again, it's not going to flex around very much. And I just used a hacksaw to chop that out. And then to chop up all the tubing, I used one of these pipe cutters. And I'm just going to go downstairs and give you a little demonstration on this right now. You just choose the spot on your pipe that you want to, I guess, chop it off at, and then clamp down the pipe cutter onto that area, and then just twist it around the pipe. And every couple revolutions you just want to tweak that knob to tighten it back up, because you notice it'll get looser and looser as you twist around, because this blade right here is chopping through the copper. Oh, and there we go. Pipe will fall off, and then you can use sandpaper, or some of these pipe cutting tools have a little pick that you can use to just clean up the burrs inside the copper tubing. With that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and assemble this without solder or anything, just put it together and show you my plans for this project. So this is what I've got. I've got that 17.5 inch long piece, just runs along here. One of the T-joints branches off with a 3-inch chunk, and then I have that 5-inch piece running along there with another T down there, the 2 2-inch pieces out there, the 90-degree elbows with those 5.5 inch pieces along there, and I've just thrown the plywood on top, basically like that. At the bottom I've got another T with 3-inch chunks branching off to either side, and then this is where you could use elbows, but I ended up using the T's instead with my 7.5 inch long pieces of pipe branching off here. To solder this thing up, I've got a vise holding my piece in place, got my 2 pieces right here. If they look really dirty or corroded or something, it's probably a good idea to go over the surfaces with some sandpaper, but these look pretty good, so I should be alright. And I'm also using some flux just to help give me a better joint, and some solder. The type doesn't really matter, just make sure it's good for copper piping. This is just some basic lead-based solder, so it should do the trick. And this is a propane torch. You can buy these in like every single hardware store on the planet will have these things. The first thing we'll do is use a paintbrush to apply a little bit of flux all around here. You don't need too much. Put your pieces together. Just going to turn on my torch and apply heat to the joint. The solder doesn't come in quite yet. You need to heat the joint up nice and hot first. There we go, it's really close. So you see how right there it sort of turned more of a purplish or a goldeny red-ish color. That should be good, so I'm just going to touch some solder to the top. And it should melt right into the joint. Keep the heat applied, just suck it in. You don't need too much. I think that's probably good. Here's another one just to show you, and keep in mind I'm not a professional plumber by any means, so please don't use this on household plumbing, this method I'm showing you. I'd probably look to somebody who's a little more knowledgeable in this kind of stuff. Apply a bit of solder and it'll just melt in there. Don't need too much. So there it is. And it's still pretty hot, and some of these soldering joints are something else, but it's all in one piece and it looked like it went together quite nicely. You probably recognize this piece of wood from earlier, and I've just marked out a grid on it, and I've set the grid in inch from the top and the bottom and 2 inches from either side. And then I just put 5 holes going that way and 4 going up, and I'm not exactly sure what their spacing is, but it looks like it should give me a good range of camera positions. I'm just going to drill this out. This bit I'm using is a 5/32 drill bit, so here we go. This should work just fine. It's very rigid and there's lots of different mounting options. My plans for the copper mount is basically 3 holes on either side for the bottom, and then up by the handle I've got another 3 holes. This will just give me 3 different mounting options for the handle, and then up further here I've got 3 on either side. These will just provide me a good place to mount up that wooden platform I made a little while ago. Even though these aren't necessarily the most straight up and down holes ever drilled, they should do the trick just fine. Sorry, the battery on the camera I was using died, so I sort of had to finish up without you guys, but basically I didn't do much. I put the little universal joint on. You've seen that in my other previous video though, and I threw some weights on the bottom. I had to play around with these guys for probably a good hour and a half to get them just perfect, and I even had to tape a weight up top here and secure one to the underside of the board. And speaking of the board, I just used some screws to screw that in place. You can see there. And then I just rigged up a tripod screw type thing to hold the camera in place. And the camera's, I mean, it's held in place great because it has the entire platform to rest on. Super stable. It's definitely not going anywhere anytime soon. The first test out of 3 I have planned is just handheld, no aids or anything, just me holding the camera in my hands. I'm going to run down the side of my house here and see how it looks. So there's a little fence over the fence, and then run. And here's that same scene on the glider I made. So over the fence, and then running down the side of the house, and out onto the street. The second test is quite simple. Just go down my driveway. And again, this is just totally handheld. Nice low view up the stairs. And onto my deck. And again with the glider. So, down part of the driveway, and then nice and low up the steps. And into the back porch. I figure a proper test wouldn't be full without a nice orbiting sort of pan around shot of a vehicle of some type, so I'm just using my 1980 Honda CM400 for that. Just pan around it here. Again, this is totally handheld, and I'm going to go up and look at the instruments. There we go. And here's the same pan around shot with the rig I made. And up to the speedometer and tachometer. Well, for the $20 I spent on this thing, I am very pleased. And it was pretty easy to make. It only took me the greater part of the afternoon. So yeah, I would highly recommend trying to make one of these yourself. And overall, you know, I wouldn't really change very much about this design. It's perfect. These guys stick out just the right amount, and the camera board up top is awesome. Yeah, not a whole lot I would change about it.